The Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, in its own reaction, is rejecting the federal government's planned 5% tax on petroleum products with a warning that it will resist the policy. In a statement, TUC describes the proposal as reckless and an act of economic wickedness against already overburdened Nigerians. Well, according to the union, introducing another levy on petroleum products is to deliberately compound suffering, cripple businesses, and push millions of citizens deeper into poverty. The Trade Union Congress points out that workers and citizens are still reeling from the pains of subsidy removal, skyrocketing fuel prices, food inflation, and a collapse in Naira. The union's leadership warns that it will resort to the option of a nationwide strike if the federal government goes ahead to implement the policy.
The Minister of Labour is currently in a closed-door meeting with union leaders to address the nationwide strike declared by the National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG. Also attending the talks are representatives from the Trade Union Congress, the Nigeria Labour Congress, and the Dangote Refinery. The Minister of State for Labour, Kiruka Onyejocha, is also present at that meeting. Well, NUPENG began its strike today protesting Dangote Refinery's alleged refusal to allow workers unionize. Labour Minister Mohammed Dingyadi had earlier appealed to the union to reconsider its decision ahead of the September 8 action. Well, that meeting has been going on for a number of hours now.
Indeed. And we'll keep an eye on that meeting currently holding behind closed doors. Our correspondent is on ground and break it as soon as it develops from there. Well, to react to the Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers NUPENG declaration of strike threatening fuel distribution across the country, we're now joined by Kelvin Emmanuel. He's an energy expert and petroleum economist. Kelvin, thank you so much for coming on the news tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I believe you're aware of this conversation and debate ongoing. NUPENG says Dangote company is coercing drivers to join another union and thereby discarding or planning to replace over 20,000 other drivers who belong to NUPENG. So if unionism is meant to be voluntary, is Dangote group of company not undermining that principle? That's their fight.
This is very, very interesting line of conversation. You know, it's interesting because I remember the last time we had a strike in the oil and gas, downstream oil and gas sector in Nigeria was before Dangote Refinery started. I don't think the government has ever had to deal with calling the minister to resolve a crisis between union leaders and any of the concerned parties, the operators or the companies in question. You know, it's always in the past been between NNPC and these unions. Now it's turned because NNPC failed over many years to get a refinery, any of the government-owned refineries working. You know, and what is interesting for me is the same unions, the TUC, Pengasen, NLC, are the same unions who went to Port Harcourt and Warri and said that NNPC refineries were working. You know, and Petron, the association, said that it picked products and then later backtracked and said, oh, it didn't pick petrol. These same unions are advocating and saying to Nigerians that they're on their side. They are not on their side because Nigerians, over the last 12 months of Dangote producing PMS, has never had to experience any disruption. What we've had in the past before Dangote started was endless queues. You know, people stay on the queue for 2-3 days. They get mugged. They miss appointments. They lose business because, you know, of the hanky-panky and all the gimmicks that has been going on. But what does the law say? Okay, what does the law say? The ILO Convention, International Labour Organization, has 8 different conventions that form since 1947 to 1949 treaty, specifically sections 87 and sections 98 that talks about collective bargaining rights of workers. But then when you look at the Trade Union Act, you look at sections 43(1)(b) of the Trade Unions Act, it says that a trade union, a federal trade union, cannot coerce workers who are not members of its union to go on a strike. Now, Dangote has purchased 4,000 CNG trucks. CNG, by the way, saves you about 40% of what diesel costs, right? He's planning to build truck terminals along the way, all right? Now the question is, should NUPENG members and all the associated bodies like Petron, like DAPMAN, like IPMAN, like MOMAN, should they have evolved? The question is, before Dangote started, should they have formed a consortium to build a refinery to compete with him or invest in his refinery? These are the questions we should ask, because what I see clearly here is that the oil and gas sector downstream has moved. You notice how NNPC is quiet in all of this.
Right.
You've not heard a word from NNPC because, in their opinion, they failed and they've pretty much said, okay, Dangote is a commercial refinery, is refining, let him handle what we've been facing.
So if I get you correctly, let me come in here. What you're saying is a new group has emerged to show the right way unionism should be done.
Exactly.
Because we heard from ADITOP, that's what they are called, Association of Distributors and Transporters of Petroleum Products. Heard them in that report say, look, that we're going to be providing better welfare for members. There'll be housing, there'll be health, and all of that. So why is NUPENG really upset at this? What does NUPENG have to lose? And come to think of it, what benefit has NUPENG been to its members before now?
So that's the big question, right? So NUPENG basically is violating the Trade Union Act that establishes it, right? 43 sections 1B that says you cannot compel members that are not part of your union to join your union. So there's a right to collective bargaining and free assembly in sections 87 and 98 of the International Labour Convention that governs trade unions and labor rights all over the world, of which Nigeria is a signatory. Right. NUPENG cannot compel non-members of his association to join his association. And if he says that Dangote has members, drivers who are complaining about bad welfare, let them provide evidence that his workers are not being paid. So far, the refinery has been working for the last 12 months. In June and July, Dangote refinery exported 1 million tons, about 1.3 billion liters of petrol. For the first time, the Dangote refinery exported petrol to the US. Dangote refinery has been a major supplier of jet A1 to the UK, to the European Union. They've been exporting jet A1 to the US also. They've been exporting transportation fuels, jet A1, AGO, petrol to Southeast Asia. Dangote is practically taking off the entire sub-Saharan African market. It's expanding to South Africa, right? So this question of NUPENG saying that Dangote is a threat to national security is simply like NUPENG is the last line of fight for the failed downstream marketers that have failed. They failed because the introduction of 4,000 trucks and the fact that over 20,000 petrol stations have registered to get direct supply from the Dangote refinery to them means that the game is over for these downstream companies.
So when you say, according to the labor laws, the union cannot coerce members to go on strike, or it cannot force anyone to go on strike. Then you have to ask, is this really about workers' rights or control on either side? Because what NUPENG is saying, and I had the National Secretary of NUPENG on Friday night on the news, and he said that Dangote company cannot establish a union for its workers. It is illegal and an aberration. Those were his words. That the Dangote company cannot simply wake up and say, my workers, my union. That is, the crux of the matter here. NUPENG is saying they should not be coerced to sign those undertakings not to join any other union apart from the one Dangote is forming for them.
Can NUPENG provide evidence that Dangote is setting up a trade union for himself according to the Trade Union Act? Can they also provide any evidence that he's coercing his workers against joining a trade union like NUPENG? Can they provide evidence to back it? Because it's both parties now,
yes.
And the important point here is that up until the refinery started until today, when the CNG trucks are about to start delivering directly, we've never had any allegation that Dangote is coercing workers against joining union. It only came up because those trucks have arrived in Nigeria from China, and they are set to start delivering directly to retail petrol station owners around Nigeria. Those trucks will reduce the cost of diesel. Those trucks will reduce the fumes that comes from burning diesel to the atmosphere, right? Nigeria has a National Climate Council, right? And Nigeria is signed to the Paris Agreement on carbon control. So it's even in line with the objectives of the Nigerian government, that Dangote is going on compressed natural gas, which will reduce carbon emissions to the atmosphere. It will ensure faster times, faster delivery times, less accidents, and it will also guarantee supply and reliability across the country.
What do you say to arguments that there is a growing monopoly in the petroleum value chain? That seems to be part of what...
Have we had disruption since last year?
There you go.
Unlike
there
before,
you go.
in 2022, in the first quarter of 2022, products were imported into Nigeria that hit what they call the anti-knocking ratio. Thousands of Nigerians had their car knocked. There was no class action suit in Nigeria suing the government for the regulator failing to ensure that the anti-knocking ratio for the octane rating for petrol that lands in Nigeria, because NMDPRA does not have a lab, despite all the money it collects in levies. It doesn't have a lab. It's standard lab to test for distillation level, for sulfur level, for octane rating.
Which Dangote has?
Which Dangote has.
Right.
So the question is, has there been reliability of supply and assurance of supply? Has anybody disturbed the president about lack of products? Like they've been disturbing him since he came into office in 2023, before Dangote came to office? No.
All right.
So well, the question is, Dangote is supplying the market and there's reliability of supply.
QED. Kelvin, Emmanuel, energy expert, petroleum economist, thank you for joining us on Newsnight.